So we will. Let me go start by going through a little of Percona University logistics. You may have already oriented yourself a little bit, right? So there are a couple of restrooms on the side out there, right? I think that's the most important facilities you will need in a day. Well, and that doesn't speak about our talk quality. It just, you know, people often need those things. Yeah. So what else? With our schedule, we run from 9 o'clock to 8:30. We'll have 2 breaks with some coffee and stuff served. We'll have an hour for lunch. Lunch is on your own. The hotel has some lunch facilities, right? And I think there are some restaurants around the corner also, I've told. And then also for ones who will survive to slightly over 6 o'clock, we'll have a raffle with some nice prizes. Other two important things. You don't have to attend all the talks, right? So it's fine if you just come and go. And if somebody wants to come later in the day, that's fine too. So you can maybe if you like the talks in the start of the day, maybe you want to let your friends know and say, oh, look at this, that's a cool thing happening. You can go ahead and come. And also, if some of you want to, discuss something about their open source databases, wherever, I will be hanging out, available for conversations, because most talks are in Spanish, and while I really love sound of language, I don't really understand a thing. Yeah, the other important thing, as you may have guessed already, we are hiring, right? So you can explore the Percona positions. Also, you can see a lot of folks in Percona shirts. Can you guys wave? Okay, yeah, Marcus, wave. Okay. Yes, you see, I guess since the time I started, I think Marcus probably already solved a couple of support cases. So yeah, he's just always busy. And then also, we have a freshest addition to our team, Bruno. Can you wave your hand? Yeah, so he even haven't formally started with us. So if you ever want to have to talk to someone about the freshest Percona interview experience or the pains of it, yes, yeah, Bruno can share all about that with you. Another logistical thing, right? So we are running now the open source database survey, right? And if you guys are using open source databases, which I guess some of you are, I would really appreciate if you can fill this out. That's what really help us to understand what's going on in the open source database ecosystem, right? Okay, yeah, and you just can pull out your phone and do it while I'm talking, right? Okay, yeah, that's a little link here, what you can do. Okay. Now let me spend a few minutes talking about how Percona got started. Some of you may know that, but I think that is an interesting story for some of us. And that was back in 2006. Wow, the whole another decade. Right, and myself, Peter, and my co-founder Vadim, we worked at MySQL AB first. That's a company who, the original company behind MySQL. Now, what happened at that time is what MySQL went ahead and then raised some venture capital, and with that, it raised a lot of focus from their customer success on really kind of revenue growth at all costs, right, for successful exit. So when we joined MySQL IB, when I joined MySQL IB, it was about, hey, let us go ahead and revolutionize the world of databases. Let's go kick some Oracle ass and so on. But right then, it significantly changes. And for us, we really liked the idea of having a very customer-focused company, right, which is very committed on their customer success, right, first and foremost. And that is how Percona was started, right? We decided to focus on consulting because that is the easiest and that is something you can start doing right from the ground up. You don't really need a lot of capital, don't have to spend years building some product and so on, right? And we started doing consulting. In a way, we thought we would do better, more customer focused than consulting company, than some other companies. Now, one thing which is was interesting for me, 2006, right? Really, just a couple of years before that, I moved from Russia to United States, right? And as often happens in those cases, I had maybe some, romantic ideas, right, for a move and say, well, you know what, that is their well-developed customers, right? They would treat their customers right and well. And then I would see in the MySQL, and again, in the consulting industry at large, you often have their consultants which kind of take your money and which kind of say, hey, we give you advice which is right for you, but which is not really all they're doing, right? They're also can be seen as a sales people which really need to get as much of that product pushed as possible, right? And while some industries in the United States by law, right, they require what's called like fiduciary responsibilities, right? Like for example, your lawyer, which you pay, are supposed to, well, act in your best interest, right? There is no such law for any other professions which you would expect, right? For example, it wasn't the case for financial advisors, right, until a few weeks ago, right, which would, a few years ago, right, which could push you a product, right, which make them money, not you money, right? Also, it's still not the case with professional services, right? Consulting, where you can, you hire the guys, but often they may have some other interests, right? Commitments and revenue channels, right? Than what they charge you, right? And from our standpoint, from my standpoint, it's very simple, right? If you are really working with customers and you take their money, then that is somebody you kind of have to pledge your loyalty, right? And really focus on their interests first and foremost. Anyway, I spend a lot of time talking about that because that is very important for me personally, and that is a very big and important part of Percona culture, how we treat customers. Now, Percona has been evolving, obviously, for a lot of years has passed, and we started with consulting, but then we figured out there are certain cases, certain problems you can't really solve by consulting alone, right? If there is some open source software which doesn't exist, right? You can't really consult on it, or if there are some fundamental problems in the software design, right? Again, you can't tune your problem away from it. And with that, Percona's software was started. So for example, we created Percona Extra Backup, right, a software for backup because there was no good open source backup solution, right? Or we have started a Percona server product because at that time there were a lot of performance limitations and some others in the MySQL, and we wanted to help our customers with that. So also our business transitioned through a year. So initially, all of our business was consulting/professional services. More recently, it has become support when you have the long-term relationships with customers, because we found that is both better for our business and better for the customers, because when people come to you when it's already house on fire, there is often very little what we can do compared to what we could have done if we would have worked with them to make sure that things do not happen, right? So they design, develop application correctly, put that in production according to best practice, and so on and so forth, right? And that is what our support can offer. So we also has been expanding to other open source databases. We added support for MongoDB in 2015, and more recently the PostgreSQL was added in 2018, right? So, and why those top 3 databases? Well, why those 3 databases? Because they are top 3 databases, right? Rather, if you look at this a list, this is from a website called DB Engines, right? They kind of measure popularity of different databases, right? Not all open source, as you can see here, but if you look at the top 5, the 3 open source database out there is MySQL, PostgreSQL, and Mongo, which we now cover, right? And I think that is important for us, because that really allows us to continue giving the best choices to our customers, helping them to choose among the top open source databases, together with providing support for specific ones if that's what we need. Now, in our case, we are really looking to be the trusted advisor for open source database technology. And I come from engineering background, so I know there is no silver bullet, right? There is no one design which, you know, is absolutely perfect for everything. It's all about the trade-offs, right? And what I very much dislike is approach when we're using the wrong tool for a job, right? As the saying goes, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? Heard that, right? And that is what we do not want people to use, right? But to use right database technology for a problem we have. Now, we cover top 3 open source databases. Now, I would expect that is to change sometime in the future. We are not making any specific commitment, and compared to some other companies, we're taking it slow, right? I have seen companies which may say, hey, you know what, we have 3 people and we cover like everything. Well, the thing is, if you really want to do it well, then database technologies are very complicated, right? Even MySQL alone, right, I would say no person at Percona knows everything to the same absolute level of experience and details. We have some people who are great on, you know, performance optimization stuff. Others would say, well, they really know all the super advanced SQL features, right, which exist out there. The other guys know all the high availability options, right, and all the intricate details, how that interacts with networking, with the cloud, and so on and so forth, right? So our approach in this case is what you should do it well or not do it at all. And in this case, that requires more stage approach, right, and making sure you build the team, build the business around the technologies before you continue. If you look at our purpose, right, and that is something which I do show to our staff members internally a lot, is to champion unbiased open source database solutions. Again, unbiased here, that is like one word which we want to reflect our customer focused. In reality, what that means is what we provide various solutions, right? And that's a word I use for support, consulting, training, remote DBA, managed services, right? For open source databases, right? The one I mentioned right now. Now we also release our software as 100% free and open source, and we really help customers to avoid the vendor lock-in, right? Because I believe vendor lock-in is is very, very bad for customers, right? Anybody loves vendor lock-in here? No? No one? Okay. Now, raise your hand if you would agree with his statement, what Oracle doesn't have customers, Oracle has hostages. No? Okay, some hands. Okay, yes. Yes, yeah, don't worry, you know, yes. Oracle salespeople are not watching, so we're not going to take it on you. Yeah, and to do that, as one of the things we do to help avoid the software vendor lock-in, we provide open source alternative to many enterprise software editions, right? So for example, Percona server for MySQL has a lot of features which only exist in MySQL Enterprise Edition, right? The same applies to Percona server for MongoDB. Now, so in the end, we cover the most popular open source database on the most popular platform, right? We have a lot of experience with various cloud solutions as well as whole different Linux distributions. We are also working more and more with new technologies like Docker, Kubernetes. For Kubernetes specifically, I think the next month we're going to release GA versions of our open source operators for MySQL and MongoDB, which is I think is going to be pretty cool. How we look at our services is this way, right? We provide the support, management services, consulting, and education, right? And overall, right, they I think provide a very good coverage, right, of needs of open source databases the company might need. Now, depending on what your situation, you may choose to use some of them, you know, or no, all of them, right? To just use our open source database software, right? That's also fine. If you look from a customer relationship standpoint, right? You can also see that this way. So if you look at the consulting, we define that as some kind of single one-off engagements that can start from really just a few hours to we have some customers which have many like really years, right? Would have some of our staff members working as a part of a team. In terms of support, we provide operational support, software support, such as bug fixes, and so on. And the managed services is for people who say, hey, you know what, databases are messy, complicated, we don't like them too much. You would rather sell that problem to somebody else, like Percona, right? So they are a first line of defense. They would kind of have to deal with my database server acting up, right, in the middle of the night, so I can continue having my beauty sleep. So that is what the managed services are for. And we also cover, in this case, entire life cycle from development to deployment and maintenance. Again, not everybody chooses us to engage at every way, but in our experience, if you get engaged with us early in a process, we can help you to prevent many problems, right, which would be more cost effective, right, especially from the impact of the application. So one interesting story here, just to illustrate that. I remember a customer coming to us and say, well, you know what, we have this wonderful application, we are going to launch it in 2 weeks, we have lined up this massive advertising campaign, we are expecting we're going to get like 500,000 users in the first month. And say, well, did you guys really do any capacity planning for that application? Well, no, not really, right? We have this developers, right, testing it on the database with about 200 rows. Well, fantastic, let us go ahead and generate you some test database. So we generated the test database, and when we go to the front page of the apps, and just the front page would load 3 hours. Right, we especially measured that. Of course, no real user would wait for 3 hours. right? But to give you the example, right? And well, the reality is, of course, we had to, scrap all the lunch plans, right? And we had to work with them to significantly rewrite that application, right? And a lot of time and momentum was lost because, well, they wouldn't do that just as some small stupid thing, right? Really design an application for the scale they actually planned. Okay. So with our, as a summary, right, what the open source database, we run best of Percona, and we really can help you there among different databases to help you with no vendor lock-in. Let's now look at the Percona software, right? To restate, what all software, Percona is free and open source, right? So we're not doing open core or open source eventually, right? Or some shared source, right? Software like MongoDB went with SSPL, right? We have some other vendors also doing some of them. Not open source license, but which still provide you access to your source code. If you look at Percona software, when it comes to our main server software, we take their MySQL MongoDB community editions. We really add some additional stuff of that. We spend a lot of time in the quality assurance, right? Because we obviously want to make sure the quality of our products matches and exceeds which comes from those upstream vendors. We focus also on additional security features a lot, right? That has been important for a lot of folks those days. And we also build in tools which are specifically designed for us to help you to reduce costs, increase productivity for your team, right? They help with availability, consistency, and so on. For Percona Server for MySQL, right? I already explained in a nutshell what this server provides. We have now Percona Server 8 is available. It has been out for quite a few months out there, and which offers compatibility with MySQL 8. Anybody here has been using MySQL 8 already? Okay. Anybody here uses MySQL? Okay. So I still haven't moved to MySQL 8, but anyway. So when you have a Percona server for MySQL 8 is already available. Now I mentioned what we have a number of enterprise features available in that version which are not available in MySQL Community Edition. And these would be some such as pluggable authentication, auditing, the advanced scalability, right, through included thread pool, as well as we spent in the last couple of years a lot on having the advanced encryption. What we have with encryption is we have integration with HashiCorp Vault for key management, and I think that is fantastic because that really allows us to get a fully open source solution, right? Because some other encryption libraries say, hey, yes, it's kind of open source, but that requires Amazon key server, right? Which is kind of locks you into only one cloud, which we don't want to do. We also have the advanced features which are not yet in MySQL 8, such as key rotation, such as scrubbing, right, and kind of re-encrypted with a completely new key, which is not required for all requirements, but that is can be a requirement for most sensitive requirements. Yeah. Okay. Another solution which you have in Percona server is MyRox, right? Anybody heard about MyRox? Okay, some of you have. So what MyRox is the storage engine which was which is a replacement for InnoDB, right, the MySQL standard storage engine, which was developed by Facebook to really get more from MySQL. Because on Facebook, of course, that is very important, right? I mean, I don't know how many servers we have, but I can guess it's more than 10,000, right? And at that scale, right, if you can half a number of servers, right, or even reduce them by 20%, that can save you a lot of dollars out there. And that is what MyRocks helps to do, right? It helps to provide much better compression than InnoDB. It also reduces amount of writes which goes to the disk. Now, you may wonder why reducing amount of writes is important. Anybody wants to guess? What is so specific about writes? Yes. So SSD wear. So if you look at the solid-state drives, many of them actually have a limit how much data you can write on them before you have to replace them, right? Before they're out, and that limit often would be the actual limiting factor, right? Before those kind of 5-year warranty, right, or something which also come with them, right? If you have a write-intensive application, you can actually go through all your SSD life cycle in really just a few months, right? So reducing that write amplification, right, how much you write to SSD is, again, very important to save costs on your SSD drives. You also have faster data load and faster replication and so on and so forth. So right, there is a lot of reasons why you would use that. Now, I want also to be careful here, right? I'm not saying what every one of you should just ditch all your InnoDB, right, and convert every single table to MyRocks, right? It has performance profile differences compared to InnoDB. It's not always faster, right? It's also doesn't have all the features. For example, it doesn't have foreign keys support, right? But for certain kind of application, that is absolutely fantastic. This is the slide I took from Facebook presentation, how they took it from to MyRocks, about MyRocks, right? And they can see, well, if you look at machines, right, you can always think about the resource limits, right, what you're using in terms of capacity. Then they would use, in the DB, they can say, hey, we don't use a lot of CPU, we don't use a lot of I/O in terms of IOPS, but we are limited by the disk space, right? Because those high-performance SSD cards, they only, you can only have so much of them packaged in the server, right? And then if they move to MyRocks, then they pretty much can consolidate it, right, in double, right? And we can say, well, you know what, now we have two systems, right, to get the same 90% space usage, we can put two of them together, right, and we can still use CPU and I/O. And you can also see for Facebook workload, it has slightly less CPU and I/O utilization, right, which is also can be seen here. Now, in terms of benchmarks we have done, right, we have this wonderful modern art produced by CTO, our CTO, Vadim Tkachenko. Anybody can understand what those graphs say? Raise your hand, come on, don't be shy. Okay, yes, Marcos raised his hand. He has a 3-hour tutorial with Vadim to explain those graphs. Okay, yeah, so let me explain that to you, and hopefully it would not take 3 hours. So what we see in this case, first one, is we see a throughput in transactions a second, right, here. And in this case, we are using Amazon have provisioned IOPS. We are provisioning the number of IOPS, right, to the storage. And what we can see is, no, actually no, this is provision IOPS and this is throughput, right, either way around. So what we can see in this case is what InnoDB, right, it has lower throughput than MyRox, and it's kind of also doesn't linearly scale, right? As you go at this level, right, you can see you don't really get any linear scalability from increasing number of IOPS anymore, right? We can see with MyRox, it's pretty much at any transaction level, it gives us their substantially better performance than InnoDB, right? And it kind of continues scales linearly up to the limit of number of IOPS we can provision on the device, right? So what that means is MyRox is able to utilize device I/O capacity very efficiently, while InnoDB starts to encounter its internal bottlenecks earlier, right? Make sense? Now, so what are those humps, right? Anybody understands or have a guess why do we have those kind of little graphs here, right, instead of just dots? Yes, that is our distribution, right? And we can see in this case is what the MyRox tends to be kind of has a higher variance, right? That's kind of one of the differences, problems, right, with that engine. So we can also see that on this graph here, right, which looks at the same workload, right, just in different ways. So in this case, we limited number of IOPS, right, and we are looking at the different amount of memory provisioned to the system, ranging from 5 gigabytes to about 120 gigabytes for the same data size, right? What is interesting in this case, we can see, is what if amount of memory is small, then InnoDB can be a lot slower than MyRox, both due to compression and due to various internal optimization, right? You can see there's quite a difference. But if you get to this point, right, where we have about 100 gig database, right, so here all the database fits in memory, we can see what InnoDB becomes faster than MyRox, right? For this workload, maybe up to 20% faster. But we can see for any workload, the InnoDB generally has a quite condensed throughput, right? You can see there's not a lot of variance, while there is a lot of variance for MyRox, but in most cases, it's still kind of substantially higher than InnoDB. Okay. Moving on to the next one, the thread pool. So we recently looked into getting the MySQL to 100,000 connections. And that's an interesting journey because you run into a lot of limits. Many of them are on the Linux operating system side, right? For example, you would be running into the limit of local ports, right? And TCP/IP connection if you just use one IP address, right? So there is some interesting problems to work around, right? If you're interested about that, read the blog post. Vadim published that. But what is interesting in this case is this. We did the comparison between MySQL Community Edition and Percona Server for MySQL. And we can see is what Percona Server with thread pool, it scales better, right, than MySQL, right? Even looking at 1K connections, 1K users, right? We can see there's maybe some 20% difference on something, right? But when you get to 25,000 users, right, and more, you can't really get that with MySQL Community Edition anymore, right? It's just unable to handle so many threads, right? Okay. The next product, which we're very proud of, is our Percona XRGB cluster. That is our clustering/high availability solution for MySQL. And it currently was not updated for version 8 yet. So it's still 5.7. And the reason for that is we really believe the expectations for your clustering software in terms of its maturity availability is a lot higher than for your single node, node server. And because of that, we really take it slow, right, and release it a few months after Percona Server 8. So it's still on version 5.7, and that is a very good way to bring availability to your MySQL environment. It's really designed to work very well in the cloud, having automatic provisioning, right? Kind of, you can really integrate it very easily with auto-scaling, self-healing, all those things we really appreciate about being easy to do in the cloud environment. And what have a lot of our customers also looking at, especially enterprise customer, is look at this solution compared to a replacement for technologies like Oracle RAC, right? Because if you look at the MySQL replication, it's kind of different, right, compared to a lot of those enterprise solutions. Well, you have master, you have slave. The data to the slave, it kind of makes it over undefined period of time. If you accidentally write to the slave, you just, you know, made data inconsistent. You cannot always read from the slave because, well, data out there may be stale, right? For a lot of enterprise environments, we just don't want that complexity. We want cluster to behave mostly as a single node database, and that is how you can have Percona XRB cluster behave, right? Then you can write to any node, read from any node, you always get the consistent data. There are ways you can relax those guarantees, right, for performance reasons, right, or choose to write only to a single node, but that option of really clustering, operating as a cluster is given to you. We also did, that's about a year ago, I think, some substantial performance and scalability improvements in Percona XRB cluster, right? So if you looked at PXE or some other Galera-based solutions, you know, a few years back and say, well, you know what, it's kind of was slow for me. You may check it out out there. And yes, we also have the data at rest encryption support in Percona XRB cluster. So now, as I mentioned, we are working on Percona XRB cluster 8. It's not really ready yet because of demands, and also there is a lot of work which goes from integrating this Galera 4 integration, Galera 4 replication library, right? So, yeah. Percona server for MongoDB, pretty much the same picture. Oh, look at that. It's, what's that? I'm just like saying, oh, look, that looks ugly. Well, anyway, I can tell you it looks much much better on my screen. And we have a Percona server for MongoDB 4, right, which is latest release, which is 100% compatible with MySQL of MongoDB Community Edition, and have some MongoDB Enterprise features added. And I would want to say it's 100% open source. Well, if you followed the drama, you may know what MongoDB changed their license to some abomination called SSPL, right? Server-side public license, right? They first try to submit that to the evaluation by the open source initiative, right? Which kind of certified which licenses are open source or not. There was a lot of backslash from that, right? So in the end, they say, well, screw you, we withdraw the license from consideration. We are a big public company, so if you don't want to call it open source, we don't give a shit, right? Which is disappointed, right? But again, right? And if that would have happened many years ago, right, we may not have gone in MongoDB market, but now we have many MongoDB customers which relies on that. And so while we don't like the change to SSPL, we have to follow, and now we provide their SSPL license. software for MongoDB. We also have a data at rest encryption, which is support for last 2 versions, right? Which has a local key management for now, right? But we are also working on adding HashiCorp Vault key management soon. Another software which is in a beta version right now is Percona Backup for MongoDB, right? If you you may know what MongoDB doesn't have a good tools for backup, open source tools for backups of sharded environments, right? And we decided to take on that challenge, similar to what we did with Percona Extra Backup years ago, right? And again, the experimental release available right now, where GA is planned to release in the next couple of months. So yeah, but you know what is a way to get the open source software you can actually use for day one, right? Well, that is to test out the experimental versions in your environment, provide bug reports, right? So we can make sure we fix everything which you particularly care about. For Postgres. For Postgres, we provide support services. We do not have any Percona branded software yet, right? But that is going to be changes, right? We are looking to release the Percona branded PostgreSQL distribution over the next few months. So that is so we make sure we really have a Percona platform covering all the open source databases we support. The next is cloud native software focus, right? And this is focusing on the Kubernetes, which we really like a lot. I think that is the operating system for your data center, which is getting some traction, right? We really had some false start, right, in this place. I remember years ago there was an OpenStack, which is supposed to like get Amazon Web Services out of business, right, in a couple of years. But while OpenStack is deployed in some organizations, right, we did not like all moved our applications to the OpenStack, right, and majority of stuff runs in a conventional public cloud, right, and even for private cloud, I think more people use technologies like VMware and so on, right, to put them together. But the Kubernetes, I think, is different. I think Kubernetes is different because it has now, it doesn't kind of try to replace a public cloud, right? It really runs on top of them, as well as in your private cloud. And we can see all the big cloud providers, we have a Kubernetes support right now. We see also private cloud vendors like VMware has Kubernetes, a lot of support for Kubernetes. All the Linux distributions also have some support, right? So there's really a lot of tractions out there, and what we are excited in this case is providing with database technologies where you can really have the clusters which are easy to manage and operate, right? Because if you look at software, right, like deploying the MySQL or any database technology on a single node is easy those days, right? I mean, you can do it pretty much within 15 minutes, right, for any major open source database. The cluster is typically a different story, right? If you typically need to go ahead and set it up for your own environment, right? So, how to log into boxes, right, and so on and so forth, right? And Kubernetes really allows to unify that, especially if it's operator frameworks, which really allows you to deploy the database clusters in a few minutes, and then also let them to take care of some of the basic self-management, like taking backups, doing a self-healing in one of the nodes dies, so Kubernetes can just reprovision other node, right, which will, automatically join the cluster and so on and so forth. So we are very excited about that. And we're also excited to see what our work has been well recognized. So the Red Hat, they also do a lot of work with Kubernetes. They launched this Operator Hub recently, right? And our Percona XRB cluster operator was one of the launch operators they chose for databases. Now, we also focus a lot on their simplifying the monitoring and management of their applications, and with that, we have been building Percona monitoring management product for a few years, which is their solution which is focused on specifically databases. Right? If you look at the market, in those cases, we can see pretty much either there are some open source solutions, right? Think maybe Zabbix, right, come to a place, or you can take, Grafana, right, for example, for visualization, right, pull out some, collectors, right, pull out some dashboards and build yourself something for monitoring databases. Or there are a number of SaaS products, right, in this space. You can think about either, Vivid Cortex, right, or Datadog, right, New Relic, right. Not all of them exactly database focused, but many of them have database monitoring features, right. There are also some enterprise products, right, non-open source, right. Think ranging from something like SolarWinds, MySQL Enterprise Monitor, MonYog, Ops Manager from MongoDB, right. Pretty much any MySQL or any database company, right, has their own some monitoring tools, right, which are often proprietary licensed, right. And we wanted to make sure we have a tool which is it's open source. B, that is the tool which is easy for you to roll out, right? You don't have to have that kind of putting something together from a Lego blocks. And free, right? It's specifically focused on the database, right? On the open source database we support. So that is the idea behind Percona monitoring management. So right now, if you look at the top features, what it provides is one is looking at the queries. I think that is a very important because in the end, as a user, well, database serves the queries for you, right? If it's responds to queries correctly, right, and with good performance, that is what you could hope for as developer. So you can see in this case is, for example, what queries are causing the load. You can drill down in the specific queries to say, hey, why are we causing the load, right? So for example, you can see how much time is spent on IOs, lock weights. You can see if query crunches through too many rows and so on and so forth, right? We also give you all the information you need to improve that query on the same page, right? Like we'll give you information about the exact query example what runs, information for create table, information about the JSON, right? The most important things you need to really take decision, right? Hey, how do I deal with this query? Do I need to add some indexes? Do I just need to go ahead and redesign my database engine and so on and so forth? Now, yeah, the contrast on the projector probably doesn't quite allow you to see that, but you see there's some good stuff here. Okay, yeah, so we also added the features. You can see together like a serial activity and the query performance at the same time. Often we found it's very helpful to correlate those things together, right? Like, oh, well, we had like a super high CPU usage or disk I/O, and that is why all the query latency jumps. We also integrate with annotations, or like Grafana annotation in this case. So what that allows you is to really push the annotations in your environment. For example, if you deploy the new application version, right, you can push that information to a PMM, and if you would know, oh, after I did that, the hell break loose, then you would be able to clearly see, right, what that was cause of the impact. We also, as I mentioned, added the PostgreSQL support. right, in this case, and continue working on that, adding more and more PostgreSQL features. And also, last year we did a lot of performance optimizations, including upgrading Prometheus to the new version. And now on a single PMM node, you can handle more than 1,000 instances, which is a pretty large environment. Another thing, what we had a number of users ask us and saying, well, you know what, you guys had a lot of collectors which capture information by default, right? But how can we get something more, right? Something custom. And in fact, we have a custom information, ability to ingest the custom information, which can be done through SQL queries, right? So for example, if you say, hey, you know what, I want to monitor a number of orders which happened in the last minute, right? Which is a query on my database. You can just configure a custom query, and it will pull information which you can visualize the same way in your dashboards, right? And the fact that we based on Grafana in this case was really appreciated by many customers of ours, right? Because that really allows a very advanced dashboard configuration, and they can display both business metrics, right, like new orders, and as well as their database performance, right, or other environment performance metrics together, right, which in the same system, which is pretty cool. We also revamped the system dashboard over the next few months to really get the most, most important information, right, you can use to see the single server system performance on the same page. And if you guys want to explore that, right, in more details, there is only so much I can show on the graph, right, then you can check out the PMM demo, percona.com, right, it has, MySQL, MongoDB, Postgres set up, so you can check it out, what it can show, and so on and so forth. Right now, we are also working on PMM2, which has been major project for us. It took longer time than expected so far. And we are really doing a lot of architecture change and rewrite to more scalable, extensible architecture, getting better scalability, security controls, and what is important is better insights for large environments, right? One complaint we have about the PMM1 is saying, hey, you know what, if you look at your environment server by server, that's kind of wonderful to review the queries, to review their load, and so on and so forth. But if I have a large environment, right, and I'm interested, oh, how is that 50 servers, which servers this feature in that application perform together, that is not very convenient to look at PMM1, right? And PMM2, we really support that much better. Finally, if you folks are interested in much more content in open source databases, I want to welcome you to Percona Live. It takes place in Austin those days, which is also fun town. Yeah, anybody been to Austin? No? Okay, yes. Is it a fun town? Yes, it is a fun town. Okay. Almost as fun as Montevideo, right? Okay, yeah. Well, and with that, thank you. And I have a few minutes for questions if you have any. Questions? Come on, don't be shy. Marcus, you always have questions, I see. I refuse, right? Okay, yeah. Okay.
HashiCorp Vault integration.
Yeah.
It's as well with Galera. And which features are you getting from basically the enterprise version of HashiCorp Vault?
Well, if you view in this case, like you work both with community and enterprise, right? We are going also to get some more advanced certification, right? With Enterprise Vault, with HashiCorp in the next few months. right? But so far, there are a lot of enterprise features, right? We kind of work on the back end, right? Getting you some more, or either integration with hardware, key management features, right? So we're pretty transparent to the front side which Percona uses. Yeah, so with Galera, that's right. You can use it either with enterprise, right, or community edition of Vault. Okay. Yes, that's right. And that's, again, that is why our focus is to make sure we support the community, community edition, right? That's what we expect a lot of people would work. And one thing about the HashiCorp, right? I mean, I think they have this interesting model, right? They actually have a lot of the good stuff in their community versions, right? But then the enterprise versions are, as you say, are really expensive. But come on, you work for public company now. Yes, you have more money than... Not yet? Ah, almost, right? Almost the finish line. Yes, okay. Any other questions? Anybody else wants to be trolled? No? Okay.